on WBNE.
Hi, I'm Cari,
And I'm Jade.
and we're the Curly Critics, and today we're talking about Hidden Figures.
Hello, welcome to our night show. We're recording this after 10 p.m. So if it sounds like we're telling a secret, we are. The secret is our podcast late at night. Welcome.
So, this movie, I've seen a lot of times. I was trying to think today when the first time I saw it was, and I cannot remember. We watched it, the last time I saw it before this was we watched it for my Society of Women Engineers, like had a movie night, and we watched it because Society of Women Engineers, women in STEM. But I really, really like this movie. I've seen it a lot of times. And that's my history with it.
So, back in the 1800s, whenever movies were still a thing, I went back in time and watched this movie for the first time, but in real time, in real life. This movie took place in the 1960s something, probably.
61.
Hello. Welcome to I don't know what I'm talking about. I just watched it today.
Okay. So, the premise of this movie is there are three women, Catherine, Dorothy, and Mary, who work for NASA. The three black women working for NASA, and it's basically their story as they like move their way through NASA and help them get Mercury 5 and I forgot which thing they did. It's helping NASA get a man orbiting the moon.
I thought that was Friendship 7.
It could be.
I think Mercury was a different one, unless we're talking about the same thing.
They might be the same thing.
Perfect.
Okay. Friendship 7 is the ship, but like Mercury is something. Oh, that's something else. Oh, it's the same thing. The Mercury spacecraft named Friendship 7 carried John Glenn around the Earth.
Nice. I
So
knew it.
we're both right.
Yes.
Anyway, so it starts with young little Catherine being too smart for school and being told to go to college because she's really good at math. And then it switches to the three women on the road where their car broke down trying to get to work. And then we're introduced to the space race and the communists. Where the police officer comes to like help them with their car and he's like, "Oh, the Russians are gonna shoot us down. We have to beat the communists." And he like helps them go to work. And then at NASA there's a briefing about how the Russians have orbited space or something and how they need to stop them. And so then the three women get new positions and we have a movie.
Yeah.
So first,
a movie that actually happened in real life.
Yeah, it's a movie based on real people. Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, and Dorothy Vaughan. Katherine Jackson died. Oh my gosh. Katherine Johnson died beginning of 2020.
Oh, I do remember that.
Which is, of course, start to a terrible year.
Hmm.
But, so Mary gets reassigned to work in the engineering department. And we learn that she wants to be an engineer, she's really smart, and she could be an engineer, but she's a black woman, and they can't be engineers. And then Dorothy wants to be a supervisor, but they don't want to pay her to be a supervisor.
She does all the work, but doesn't get paid to do the supervisor position, even though she already does all the work anyways. I'm sure a lot of people in the retail business understand this.
Yes. And so we also meet Dorothy's like nemesis, Miss Mitchell, who's
Isn't
like
she all of our nemesis?
Yeah, she's like the white counterpart. There are two computing groups, which are just girls who do math, basically. They do the work of a calculator. And there's the West Computing Group, which is all black women, and then like the East Computing Group, which is all white women. And so Mrs. Mitchell runs the East Computing Group, and Dorothy runs unofficially the West Computing Group.
Mm-hmm.
And then Catherine is promoted to the Space Task Force to do checking their work and like helping them figure out flight patterns because she's good at
Mm-hmm.
analytical geometry. So that's the premise. And the story, it's like a story about the three of them, but it's mostly about Catherine,
Yeah.
which I'm okay with. She's the most famous out of the three of them.
Yeah, and they did a really good job of balancing it as well. They did a fantastic job of, okay, this is this person's entire story. Okay, now this is this person's entire story. And now we're going to focus on Catherine, who most people already know.
Yeah, it would probably be easier to walk through their entire like stories woman by women instead of movie wise.
Yeah.
So Mary wants to be an engineer, and the like guy that I forgot his name that's like working in the engineering department was like, Mary, you should be an engineer. And she's like, I can't. I'm a black woman. And he's like, I'm a Polish Jew whose parents died in a Nazi Holocaust camp. Like, I didn't think I'd be here. We're literally doing the impossible. You should be an engineer. So then she applies to be an engineer and she gets rejected.
Yeah, because she didn't take specific classes that are only taken at a white school. So
Yeah.
she literally cannot take those classes.
Yeah, she has to take like the introduction to engineering class. And so she goes to court and she's like, I want to go to this white high school and take this class. And she gives a really inspirational speech. And I was like, wow, you go, girl.
That was actually my favorite scene, talking about how, well, you understand being first, right? You were the first to go to the military in your family. You were the first to do this. You were the first to do this. Now we've got the first man in space, and we've got the first man orbiting the Earth, and we're going to get the first man to the moon. But I need your signature and that class to be able to make that happen. And she convinces him, and he goes, you're allowed in the night classes. That's it. That was my favorite part of the whole movie. Don't hate me for that.
I love that. My favorite part of the movie is a lot less significant than that.
Oh, is it the walking down the hallway? Because I love that too.
No, it's the
Like,
bathroom scene.
oh yeah.
What's the walking down the hallway?
When she hasn't been named supervisor yet, but she takes all the people out of the
Oh,
West Wing and they're all walking down the hallway and it's this really cool thing. I'm like, yeah,
yeah, we'll
freaking
get to that.
women. High heels, my guy.
Yes, so she goes and takes night classes and then she becomes an engineer.
Yeah.
And she like Mary is like having to overcome the fact that her husband is like, why do you want to do this? And eventually he comes around because he's not a terrible human being.
Yeah, he had the sweetest scene where she's getting ready for night classes and he's standing in the doorway and she goes, you have something to say? And he goes, well, you're gonna need these when you go to school. And I guess mechanical pencils weren't a thing because he was showing this incredibly smart engineer how a pencil works. And I think that's adorable. Um, he's like, yeah, you just put the lead in here.
Anyway, I googled when did mechanical pencils become a thing, and the answer is apparently 1822. I'm what? I'm really blown away that mechanical pencils came out in the 1800s.
So he's just dumb.
Anyway,
It may have just been a cute scene for the movies, which is fine. I'm okay with
yeah,
that.
it is a cute scene. He's like, it was probably one of those things where he was like, I got this thing for her and I'm gonna show her how it works because I'm a man. And then the whole time she's like, yeah, I use these all the time. But then she's like, uh huh, honey. This is so
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, it was nice.
So then we have Dorothy's story. Dorothy wants to be a supervisor, and then NASA's getting the IBM machine, which is just a big calculator.
Mm-hmm.
It's a computer that's going to replace all of the computers as people. And so Dorothy like sneaks in to figure out how the machine works because she realizes this is going to be the future, and if somebody needs to know how it works or we're all going to be out of a job. So she
Mm-hmm.
figures out how it works, and then she trains all of her computers how it works to know how it works. And then there's that awesome scene where it's like fully up and running, and she like brings all of the like West Wing computers down the hallway and into the machine room to start working because they're the only ones who know how the machine works.
Yes, ma'am.
And so just through the whole movie, there's a lot of like Dorothy wants to do this one thing, and Miss Mitchell's like, no, you can't do that because that's not how things go. And it's just back and forth. And then eventually at the end, as Dorothy's the only one who knows how the machine works, Mrs. Mitchell comes out and is like, there's some girls in the East competing group who want to know how the machine works. Is it okay if they come over here and learn how it works too? And Dorothy's like, yeah, bring them. And then they come, and it's uniting.
Yay.
So then we have basically the main plot of the movie, which is about Catherine.
Yes.
So Catherine's whole story is framed around they're trying to get a man to orbit the Earth. John Glenn and Friendship 7. But the issue is the for the first half of the movie, the issue is that the heat shield keeps breaking and all these technical engineering things. But the scenes that I find just whole Catherine's whole thing is so significant to me because when she first gets into the group, they're all like it's a room full of men who all look exactly the same or are dressed exactly the same, who like every time she moves are like looking at her weird, and even after her first day of work, they like give her own coffee pot because colored people can't use the same coffee pot as them.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the room, like the building that she's in doesn't have a colored bathroom, and so she has to like run all the way across camp like half a mile every day to go to the bathroom. And so there's just you in this place of both intense misogyny and intense racism.
Mm-hmm.
And then Catherine's just like, I'm literally the only one who knows how to do math in this room.
Yeah.
And I love that for her. But eventually one day she is asked to check Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory's numbers, Paul Stafford. And Paul this whole time has been like erased, like redacting things so she can't know too much. And she's like, well, how am I supposed to fix the numbers if I can't understand what's going on? And they're like, you know, like we've given you all you need to know. But she like holds it up to the light because she's big brain and discovers like that the heat shield's falling off or something like that, or that it's the ship is like getting too hot on reentry, something like she discovers something about it, and then she like does all of the calculations to like fix it, and then everybody's like, wait a minute, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about the director Al
Mm-hmm.
because I really really like him as a character.
He's fantastic.
You can tell that he's a little bit misogynistic too and a little bit racist too. But then when Catherine starts showing up and is like, hi, I know what I'm doing and I'm better than all of you, he's like, well, we gotta get a man to space somehow.
Yeah.
And he just really softens throughout the whole movie into like really appreciating Catherine for who she is.
He eventually ends up giving her his clearance badge so she can be in the command control center room. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, so she figures out all the calculations and then they like give her clearance to like be in the know and to like do all the calculations. And so then eventually they have to figure out the go no go range, which is the spot where the ship has to re-enter. It has to be like a certain angle and velocity or whatever, or the ship will blow up. Me pretending like I know what's going on in space. My biomedical engineering degree. You need me to calculate the angle?
My music degree isn't going to be of any assistance today.
You need me to calculate the angle of your hip? I can do that. The forces in your knee joint? Got that. Space? Only kind of understand.
I sing notes. Pretty.
This is the thing about this movie is I think the first time I watched it I was still in high school. But I remember very clearly one time when I was watching this movie and I understood what Euler's method was. And I like know how it works. And I was like, oh no, I am actually smart now. Which is so funny in that scene. They're like trying to calculate the range and they like can't figure it out. And then Catherine's like, wait, maybe we, instead of trying to invent the math, we just need to go back to math we haven't used in a long time. She's like, Euler's method. And then Paul Stafford, the worst man alive, is like, but that's ancient. But I learned that in class. Like, they still teach that.
That's crazy.
I mean, I don't think I've ever had to use it, but I know how it works. Anyway, she calculates the stuff, she becomes super smart, but then the machine, the IBM gets up and running, and they're like, sorry, we don't need you anymore. But then the day of the launch comes, and the, like, numbers are wrong, the IBM's not working right, and so then John Glenn's like, call the Catherine girl. I know she'll do it right. And so they call Catherine, who, like, does the calculations really fast, and then she helps John Glenn get to space.
Yeah.
My favorite scene in the whole movie is when Al tears down the colored bathroom sign. Because I love that. So basically, Catherine has to run to go to the bathroom, and then Al gets mad at her and is like, where are you all the time? And then Catherine screams at him and is like, you guys don't respect me. I have to go across campus to use the bathroom. So, sorry. And then Al realizes that there are more important things going on than racism. And so he goes to the colored bathrooms and like tears down the sign that says it's the colored bathroom. And he's like, at NASA, we all pee the same color. And then he just leaves.
Fantastic.
So that's the rough summary of the movie.
Yeah. One of my other favorite scenes was when the astronauts were coming and shaking hands with all the NASA people, and so all the white people are on one side and all the black people are farther down the line, and the astronauts are told, hey, we need to get going. And John Glenn goes, well, I haven't shaken everyone's hand yet. And so he goes over to shake the black women's hands and is like, hey, you guys are doing great. And they introduce themselves by name. And he's like, okay, what are you doing to help this process? And so they explain what they're doing. And he's like, wow, you guys are really smart. Like, this is really cool. And he was really nice to them. And all the other people were really upset with him. And they commented on how, like, oh, he's fine, and I can judge fine by any color. And all I could think was, like, I think our new catchphrase, if we ever had one to begin with, I think our new catchphrase needs to be kindness is cute, you guys. Like, it's adorable. Okay?
I love that the only thing I was thinking about in that scene is where Mary's like looking at the astronauts and Catherine or Dorothy, I can't remember which one, goes, "You are not ogling at these white men."
Yes. And
I
that's
love
why
that.
she's like, I can tell fine in any color. And I'm like, yes, ma'am.
Their friendship throughout this whole movie is just so cute
Yeah.
because like in the beginning of the movie they're trying to fix the car and they're like bantering with each other and
Mm-hmm.
um and then they're all like constantly trying to like rein Mary in because she's just too much.
Yeah.
But it's just like fun. And then they have like a potluck where Catherine meets her future husband and they just keep trying to get Catherine to talk to him and Mary like waves him over and she's like, "Oh, Catherine, he's coming over here." And Dorothy's like, "Only because Mary told him to." And Catherine's like holding like plates for her children.
I love it. We stand good female relationships in this house.
It's just such a good dynamic.
It is. I mean, it's really survival at that point. Like, they're literally changing the world. They have to rely on each other at that point.
Yes. I love this movie for the way that it handles both misogyny and racism, and the same go so gracefully.
Intersectionalism.
Because it's not a lot of. The thing I hate about feminist movies are when they hate on men.
Right.
And this movie doesn't do a lot of that.
It doesn't hardly do any.
Yeah, I was trying to think of an example of when it did, but I can't think of one because it's perfect. But Catherine becomes as good as she is because she's like that good at her job.
Right.
And Mary becomes what she is, and Dorothy becomes what they are because they're just good at their job. And that's not any fault of a man. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
because a man was lifting them up or tearing them down in any way. They're just that good. And once given the opportunity, they went for it and they did great things for NASA.
Yeah.
And it's just, I love the line when the Polish guy is trying to convince Mary to go to engineering school, and he's like, "A person with an engineering mind should be doing engineering."
Mm-hmm.
And that's just something like I go to a school that's mostly STEM engineering majors, and the gender ratio is way off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in biomedical engineering, which is in my class 50-50, and statistically in the world 50-50, but I have a friend who's an electrical engineer and she's the only girl in her class.
Yeah. And that's not uncommon.
Right. And so it's just there aren't enough women in STEM. And there should be, because people who have engineering minds should be doing engineering. No
Mm-hmm.
matter what the color of their skin is or what body parts they have or gender they are, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just really love this movie. I just love seeing powerful women doing things because they're powerful women and not because
Yeah.
man oppressed them and they had to do it and they get their moment of power because they stand up against men and then they destroy spaceships.
Mm-hmm.
One of these days we're gonna have to talk about Captain Marvel.
No. Ladies and gents, I still haven't seen it and don't want to.
I'm sorry for everyone who likes Captain Marvel, but I can give you a 4-page essay about why I don't like it and why I don't think it's a good feminist movie. Ask me about
Boy,
Wonder
howdy.
Woman. That's a good feminist movie. Not the second one, though.
We'll worry about that at a later date.
But that's not the point. Who directed this movie?
Good question. I don't know.
I'm Googling it. It was directed by Theodore Melfi. Which surprises me. Not because I know who that is, but because it's a man.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, if men direct movies like this, it doesn't turn out as well. But he did a good job. It was written by a woman or something. It was written by Theodore Melfi and Alison Schroeder.
Okay.
It's based on a nonfiction book of the same name.
Yeah, we should have read the book.
Everything's based on a book.
Yeah.
I also like the theme that's like kind of in this movie about how racism is bad, but not as bad as the communists.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, you're black, but we can't let the Russians get to space first, so guess it doesn't matter anymore.
I was trying to find a good quote. There's a lot of really good one-liners. I just happen to not be able to find any at the moment. It's fine. One of my favorite things about this movie, and they did the same thing in Hacksaw Ridge, which we all know I stan a lot.
Have you heard that? Have we talked about Hacksaw Ridge on this before?
I think so. If not,
I know that, but
I love the movie Hacksaw Ridge, you guys. Like,
and
it's
I
one
love
of my
Andrew Garfield.
favorites. Yeah, it's literally one of my favorite movies.
I have not known that. Watch that because I am afraid of war movies. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
Like, that movie is 3 hours long, and by the end of it, it felt like I'd been sitting in the theater for 5 minutes. It just overwhelmingly overtakes you. And there's not many movies that have done that. One of the best things about that movie is at the very end, they have the survivors retelling the stories that you just witnessed in the movie. Like, an explosion happened nearby and a guy had blood all over his face and it was covering his eyes and he couldn't see, and he's screaming, I'm blind, I can't see, I'm never gonna see again. And Andrew Garfield, the protagonist, takes a rag and wipes his eyes off and he's like, you just gave me my sight back. And then this 90-something-year-old man retells this story in an interview at the very end. And one of my favorite things about Hidden Figures is that throughout the entire thing, they interject real footage from when this was actually happening, and real pictures and real speeches and real radio broadcasts. And it's so impactful. It's so crazy because you're like, this did happen. Because people our age were like, meh, what's real anymore? We don't... Old people, am I right?
Moon landing is a conspiracy theory. Just kidding. I don't think it was.
No, but like...
I know enough about engineering and science to know that the moon landing is entirely possible.
Yes. So... But getting to hear those real life things and getting to see them right in front of our eyes within this fictional reality, and even in like with the filmography where they take the real footage of what's going on in black and white, and then it kind of merges into the actors, and suddenly the actors that are doing that exact scene are in black and white, and then it all kind of fades into color, and then it's back into the fictional world that they're trying to recreate. And I'm just going, the filmography, my guy, like, it's so phenomenal. And that's just like a 0.2 second thing, but it's so impactful.
Yeah, I get chills every time that JFK gives his speech in the
Mm-hmm.
movie because, I mean, that's one of JFK's most famous speeches, and
Yeah.
we know about it all the time. But hearing it in the like narrative framework of like the context of the time that it was said, of this is the space race, we're trying to beat them, like we're gonna get to space, and then seeing the behind the scenes people of everybody working on it, and okay, we did this one thing, now we're gonna go to the moon. And then the way that like JFK gives his speech, and then it cuts to them all watching that and being like, guess we're going to the moon, better start getting to work, and like that's the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like easy to forget that in history people are real people.
Yeah, it, especially when there's so many, they kind of become fictional characters. Like, just because there's so many adaptations of the same story, you kind of don't realize what's real and what's not. And it's hard to even tell unless you have some sort of second party source, like a newspaper or something from the time, that even that may not be reliable, but that's the best you got. Or someone that was alive during that time with all the biases they already come with, because nothing is objective.
This is a PSA. Nothing is objective.
That's what I learned the first day of sociology class. You can try, but you will fail.
Yeah, especially with things like the space race, which were 30, 40 years before we were born.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hype of it in the moment and be like, oh, these like people, we did this thing, like that's so cool. But we never experienced that, and so it just is something that is. And I've been to so many museums like where there's like, look at this space cap. Like I've like seen space shuttles in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's
We're
hard
really
to
close to NASA in Houston. I've toured it myself. We have a teacher who works there.
right. I've been to the Port Canaveral NASA and the
Mm-hmm.
Smithsonian's, and there's there's a space shuttle somewhere else that I went to recently. I'll look that up in a second. But it's really hard to associate things you see in a museum with the fact that people actually use them at some point.
Yeah.
And like NASA museums and the Smithsonian always have like the, like I've seen this all the time, the Russian capsule, and it's like this is what the Russians did to get into space. And you're like, "Oh, that's cool." But you have to like remember that there were like people in there at some point. And like most of them are models, so it like wasn't that specific one, but like something just like that had people in it and they went to space in that.
Mm-hmm.
I love space.
I love space. That's actually our new catchphrase. Kindness is cute? No, space is cute. Carrie's judging me.
No, I'm agreeing with you. History is just so fascinating. And so, like, seeing a fictional adaptation like this, where I am assuming that a lot of the things in this movie are not 100% accurate.
Well, yeah, naturally.
I know that the people were real people and that most of the things that happened were probably dramatizations, but the
Mm-hmm.
main thread of the movie is the same. There were these people working on these mathematical calculations to get these people to space.
Yeah. And the same misogynistic, racist things were going on. Now, whether those exact lines were said by those exact people, maybe not, but the same things were happening.
Yes. I was looking up where the space shuttles are. um, right, and seeing it in this context makes history come alive, and it makes us
Mm-hmm.
like feel connected. And especially as somebody, like, I'm not black, but I am a woman in STEM, and so seeing those like relationships and those connections and the way that like men look at them differently is very relatable. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, if they can do it, I can do it. I'm not gonna do it, but everybody I know can do it.
Yeah. It was kind of like, so I don't know if any of you have been to this particular museum, the Titanic Museum in Missouri, in Branson, Missouri. Have you been?
Yes, I have. Is that the one where they give you a
So,
card and you like walk through the museum?
yes. And
Then
it's
yes.
also shaped like the freaking Titanic, which is so cool. Like, you're literally walking into the. It's so cool. It's interactive. They've got sideways walls where they can show you, like, oh, this is when the boat was tipping. This is what degree the walls were at. Try standing on it, or try leaving your hand in this water that we've made the exact temperature of the water that night, and see how long you can stand that water. Things like that. But there's one particular room where they've remodeled it to look like the room where the musicians were playing. And the musicians played all night. They I forget which hymn they played, but they played it over like the loudspeaker. And that was one of the most impactful rooms in the entire thing. One, because I connect with music so much, and a lot of other people connect with music regardless. But two, because they had that same work ethic. They were going down with that ship because they had practiced their entire lives for that moment. They were playing a hymn to keep people at peace because that was familiar, because that music was keeping them calm. That was their life's work to do that. And so me skipping out on practice because I'm freaking lazy is like, oh, they literally gave their lives for their profession because it meant the world to everyone. And now they've gone down in history as heroes. In my book, not actually. So it's the same idea of like, you really relate to the people that do the same thing you do.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, and it's hard to relate to anything else for sure, but it's a lot easier when you're in the museum literally looking at it, looking at the words they wrote or the things they touched or the things that they did or created, or getting to see a replica of a room they were in, or getting to see a movie that was created after them and going, they did this so that I could live the way I do now, which is wild. Because if they hadn't done that then, you probably wouldn't be in STEM right now.
Yeah. Somebody had to be the first.
Yes.
That's the way
I
I
love
felt
that scene.
when we visited Ellis Island.
Yeah.
That place was way more emotionally taxing than I was expecting it to be,
I would
because
love to go there.
you one like my family is like my dad's family is very German,
Mm-hmm.
and my half of my mom's side is very German too. And so we like know that like we had family go through there, and we even like looked it up and like found some stuff. But even then, before then, we were like, there was no way that they didn't come through here because like the
Right.
timeline worked out right. So it's like walking in there, and it's like our ancestors walked through this island to get to America to have a better life, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's impactful on its own. But like Ellis Island is like it's empty. They didn't like restore it the way it is, but the building is the same. And so you're like
Mm-hmm.
walking, and you're like people like spent their like built up their hopes and dreams to come here. They traveled all the way across the ocean to come, and I'm walking on the same tiles that they did. And you
Yeah.
can like feel the like energy that's there, and it's kind of almost like the ghosts of the past.
Yeah, it's eerie, but it's also it's hard to explain.
Yeah, that's it. I think I just get vibe. Like I feel like I'm really connected to things like that.
Yeah.
Because it's also the same thing happened to me in London, of all
Yeah.
places. I was like walking down the street of London, and I was like, I feel weird.
Yeah. I would definitely there's several places I want to visit like where the Twin Towers fell. I want to visit there. I want to
Yeah,
visit
when we were at Ellis
the
Island, my dad was like, we have extra time. Let's go to the 9/11 memorial. And my mom and I were like, let's not.
yeah, it's a
We do not
lot.
have emotional energy left for that.
Mhm. And I want to go to the Holocaust Museum in New York and Yad Vashem across Lay Pond. Um because even though it's hard, it's something that everyone should do because it's one thing to read a book, even if it is a diary of someone who experienced that. It's one thing to hear it from someone if you were lucky enough to have the chance. It's another thing to be where those people were, to see what they saw, to see faces of kids that were killed. Like, we sang a song about Yad Vashem at a music conference, and my choir director chose the song because she and the composer both visited Yad Vashem together and were so moved by it that they wrote a song about the suffering of the kids and had children's names in the song that we had to learn how to pronounce correctly. And it was such a heavy thing to have to perform. I've also done a song on 9/11, and my choir teacher then said that she sang that song at the memorial and that they barely got through it, which obviously, because music connects people to each other and to the past. And it's insane. Someone needs to write a song about hidden figures. That's really the point I'm trying to make right now.
The score of Hidden Figures is so good.
It's
It's like
fantastic.
in my study playlist. But I was gonna say that was one of the things that both relieved me and upset me about when we visited Berlin. And
Mm.
it's completely understandable because that city got wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a lot of war stuff left in Berlin. And like as a city that's so has so much history in it, it was like a little surprising to be like, oh yeah, this is not like what I expected. I expected it to be more heavy than it was.
Mm-hmm.
But there's little things. We toured the Parliament building, and there's parts of the building that are exposed that when they were remodeling it after it's on the east side, so after the Soviet Union collapsed and they like rebuilt the Capitol in Berlin, they were remodeling, and there's parts of the exposed wall that they left because when the Russians took over, they like wrote on the wall stuff like so and so was here, and like all of these things. It's just like like very typical graffiti of
Mm-hmm.
Bob was here, but like it was a very visible remembrance that there were people here, that the Russians took over this place. And then there's also a line throughout the whole city of where the Berlin Wall used to be
Mm-hmm.
that you can like walk on. And there's some parts of the Berlin Wall that are still up. But we visited the DDR, no, the Gestapo place. I forgot what it was called. But there's like a museum there of
Yeah.
where the location of where the Gestapo headquarters used to be, but it's not there anymore because it got blown up. And my main man, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, was imprisoned like there for a little bit before he got sent somewhere else and then before he died. But it was like, I kind of was like, wow, this was here, but not in this modern building.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what the point I'm trying to say is. We also visited Bonhoeffer's house, and they've like kept his room exactly the same as it was the day he was arrested. That felt heavy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's something really significant about when history comes to life.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like this movie did. That was my point. Very long way of going.
Definitely.
In case you're wondering, there are 4 space shuttles on display, and they're in the second Smithsonian that's in Virginia, near DC, at Port Canaveral, California, and the Intrepid Air and Space Museum. So I've seen 2 of them. The third one, my parents went to see the Virginia one with my brothers when I was little without me, so I haven't seen that one.
Nice.
But the Intrepid was the one I was thinking about. I was like, I've seen one recently. When was it? Back in the good old days when New York was still open. Good old 2018 when Anastasia was still on Broadway. Who's your favorite character in this movie?
Oh, don't do that. Oh no. Um, I think I do have to say Catherine, just because she really held herself together. She really held a lot of composure and still had compassion for others and still had empathy and understanding, and pretty much just because she didn't let anything sway her. Like, you could tell when anyone else was questioned or bothered that they fought back, which I don't have a problem with because there was injustice happening. But to be in the face of so much injustice and still keep your composure almost the entire time is fantastic. It was just phenomenal work to both the actual person and the actress, because she had to portray that idea.
Yes, I love that. I was also gonna say Catherine, but Al is a close second.
Yeah.
Because I feel like his character throughout the movie had real depth. That is like
Mm-hmm.
stern white guy who doesn't like to show his emotions, but also the way that the acting was done, you could tell that this guy is like really stressed out at this moment, and this guy like actually cares about Catherine and all of those things. I
So what you're saying is it's another Luke Danes character?
yes, but with NASA.
So big, smart, no diner.
Really big diner. Diner is space.
Oh my gosh. That's it. That's our tweet.
Another point that I thought of that I really loved about this movie, but about these women just in general, not as like people. but that I think the movie did really well, was to display them as strong women in STEM and like doing things and changing the world, but also as mothers.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel like a lot of times the the feminist movement forgets that to be a mother is still a really beautiful thing to be,
Mm-hmm.
and that it turns into, well, if you're not the CEO of a company, you're not doing us proud enough, you're not doing us enough. But just even the balance of, I can do these great things from the company I'm working at or for the world or for NASA or whatever, while also still going home and having a good relationship with my children. And the fact that I work doesn't stop that from happening. And that
Yeah.
to be a mother isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, that was pretty fantastic.
And that just because you want to be a mother doesn't mean you're not a feminist. Those are my thoughts.
Yep. It's really about the choices you make and if you're allowed to follow through with those choices regardless of what they are.
And the main point is that women are amazing. So, do you have any final thoughts?
I think we covered it all.
Okay, what do you think the Rotten Tomato score is?
The We do the critic and audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh god. I don't know. Critic 90, audience 95.
I was also going to say Critic 90. I thought of this beforehand, I'm not copying you. But I'm going to say Audience 85.
Oh,
Click. I left my phone on the other side of the room, so I have to use my computer for once.
gross.
I've not looked at Rotten Tomatoes on the computer in a long time. Where are the scores? Oh, they're right at the top. Critic 93, Audience 93.
Well, I call that a win, except for you, so I win.
Congratulations, you win.
Give me the
I
popcorn.
ask this like guessing game every time, and then we never do anything about it. Should we start giving points based on who gets it the most right?
I'm always right.
Oh. Well then, never mind.
Wait, what?
I don't want you to win.
What the heck?
Okay,
I just like knowing. I just like guessing things. Is there anything wrong with that? Does there have to be a prize?
No, we can just guess things.
Gosh. Honestly.
Now I want you to guess what your score for this movie is.
Help me. I've been thinking about it this whole time, and it still stresses me out to no end.
This is so funny because I watch movies and I'm usually like 5 minutes in and I'm like, I'm probably gonna give this score. And then if my opinion's not changed by the end of the movie, that's what I'm gonna give it.
What the heck?
And
No,
sometimes
I just enjoy it.
Sometimes I change it based on our conversation, but for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, I decide really early and really easily.
Yeah.
But I enjoy watching you squirm every week.
Help. Send help. Please. I don't know. You know what my problem is? I can't think of any negatives to this movie. I can't think of any. The score, the characters, the acting, the writing, the story, the filmography, even the freaking title's good. The one-liners, the fact that it's PG and there's only like 3 cuss words in it. The real life story, everything about it. Like, I'm gonna give it a 9.5.
A 9.5.
The 0.5 is just because. That's it. There's no end to that sentence. Just because.
I keep going back and forth on my score.
Like, honestly thinking about it, my hidden figure is 10. But for some reason, something's holding me back, and I'm not sure what.
That's exactly where I'm at. Like, I've seen this movie so many times and I like it so much, I should give it a 10. And looking at the other movies I've given a 10, there's no reason why I shouldn't give this movie a 10. I just can't do it.
But there's just something, right?
I'm gonna give it a 9.75.
Oh my gosh, you're a coward.
Do you think I should give it a 10? I've given more 10s than you have.
After how much you've talked about this movie?
I've given 2 10s. Fine, I'll give it a 10.
There you go. Now you'll be able to sleep at night. 9.75.
Okay,
get that crap out of here.
You know what this means, Jade?
This is the new
We've
top
brought
movie.
a movie. Yes. There's a movie in our top 5 that's not a musical.
Oh my gosh. Like, critically and personally speaking, there's honestly nothing wrong with this movie. I guess the biggest thing for me is that I don't relate to it because I'm not a STEM person. I think that's the biggest thing. That's what's holding me back. And that's where the 0.5 comes from. That's just personally.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Together,
but it gives you things
movie...
to think about, and it's nice. Sorry, go ahead.
Together, we give this movie a 9.67, which makes it our new top movie.
Oh, that hurt.
Okay, let me do some fancy Excel stuff.
What was our top before Newsies?
So our top 5 movies. Bandstand. Because I gave Newsies an 8.
I'm still mad.
So, top 5 are Hidden Figures, Bandstand, Stage Newsies, Klaus. Oh, that's 5. That's 5. No, wait. That's 4. And Hamilton.
I still... We need to get Klaus out of here.
No! That movie's so good.
It's
so
just
good.
creepy, man.
Klaus has a better critic score on Rotten Tomatoes than Hidden Figures does. By 1 point, but...
Irrelevant.
has a way better audience score.
Yeah.
But whatever. You can hate what you want. Even if I don't agree.
Newsies will always... Newsies will always be number 1 in my heart. And that's okay. I'll be fine.
Yeah, Newsies is the only movie you've given a 10 to so far. I've given 3 10s now.
I will clutch my Newsies hat proudly and cry a lot.
I've given 3 10s, Jade. We need to stop.
Because Newsies is the only thing that deserves a 10. I have to compare everything to Newsies now.
These, like, I've given Hidden Figures, Bandstand, and Klaus 10s. And they just don't all feel in the same range. They don't feel the same to me.
Well,
they're all 3 very different movies. But...
They're very different. But critically, they are all 10s. 100%. I agree with you. Now, if you don't feel they're in the same range personally, you'll have to do some soul searching for that. That's okay.
I know that in the moment, I gave them 10s because Klaus is definitely 10, like I'm not gonna stand it. Bandstand, like a few weeks later feels like that's not a 10. But then I remember like us talking about Bandstand and I was like, no, that deserves a 10 too.
Yeah, Right This Way alone deserves a 10.
True. So, those are scores. This is Hidden Figures. The movie about women. Guess we have to wrap now.
Heck yeah.
Wrap us up, Jade.
Okay, like a burrito, friends. No, we're curly fries in this house. Stop. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, whatever other social media we have at Curly Critics Pod. Email us at curlycriticspod@gmail.com. Rate us 5 pineapples on whatever streaming service you listen to us to. Comment on our YouTube because we have one of those. Super duper fun. Yeah, social media is hard.
We don't post video, but...
No, we don't. But if you just like YouTube better, which I kind of do, go for it. Have a party.
Great. So, Curly Critics is a proud member of the WB&E network, which has 8 awesome shows to listen to and enjoy. One of which is Sincerely Us, which is 2 girls, Becca and Eni, 2 of my favorite people on earth, who just talk about music theater and hang out. I was on their podcast last week, 2 weeks ago. Time is lost on me, but Becca ranted in the podcast for like 20 minutes about the lightning thief, and it was a great time. We talked about the Tonys for a very long time. So you should check out their podcast, and here's a promo.
Dear listener, today's going to be a good day, and here's why.
Because today we have found your new favorite podcast.
Do you like all things musical theater?
Or do you just like Hamilton?
Then Sincerely Us is perfect for you.
We take deep dives into modern musicals and teach you all that you need to know.
From props and sets
to playwrights and composers,
we will get you caught up on all things Broadway.
We are Becca and Eni, 2 best friends,
here to teach you all about the shows that we love.
Sincerely Us, a podcast for the casual musical theater fan.
Join us every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts and on WBNE.org.
I never know what to say after the promo's over. We haven't figured that out yet. Bye.
We've been the Curly Critics. We should be like, I'm Curly and I'm Critic. Bye.
Which is which? Am I Curly or are you Critic? Wait.
She heard that too. Good.
Which is which?
You know which is which.
Okay, fine. Start it.
I'm Curly.
And I'm Critic. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. See, that's so cute. How adorable is that? We're so cute.